Well, good afternoon. This year's presentation certainly falls under the category of what a difference a year makes. When we were together 12 months ago, we presented 2008 as a bridge year, with revenue growth depending primarily on new installation opportunities and leading toward our big growth step in 2009, primarily on the back of new V-diesel engines in North America. We were optimistic and confident, and based on the OEM feedback, there were many good reasons for optimism and confidence. But when we stand in front of you today, we have not managed to reach the targets that we had set for ourselves. Despite that we haven't managed to reach those targets, there's been a lot of good progress during the year. There have been 4 new passenger vehicles launched with SinterCast CGI engines, which is an increase of 22%. The DAF 12.9-liter commercial vehicle engine began production at the Tupi foundry in Brazil. International Navistar delivered the first ever vehicle with a SinterCast CGI engine in North America. Our production volume ramped up dramatically for turbocharger housings and exhaust manifolds in China. And following a new representation agreement in India, we started to make very good inroads with the Indian foundries and the commercial vehicle OEMs. But for SinterCast, the most tangible way of measuring our progress is in terms of series production engine equivalents. And in this overhead, we can see the production level at the last 3 AGMs. And coming to September last year, when we had an annualized production of 750,000 engine equivalents, we were completely on schedule to meet our production targets. As you may recall, September was also the time frame when what we then called the banking crisis began to affect the automotive sector. And most new vehicles are purchased on credit, whether it's passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, or even agriculture and construction equipment. And as the availability of credit began to dry up, so too did the volume of new vehicle sales decrease. And this decrease has affected the OEMs. Of course, if an OEM needs new passenger vehicle sales of 1 million units per year to be profitable, and the new volume is only 600 or 700,000, the business isn't viable. And they have to start to restructure, and they have to start to cut. And that spirals its way through the supply chain and also affects companies like SinterCast. So now when we compare the level at today's AGM, our year-on-year production compared to last March, which is the last full month that we can account before this meeting, is down 38% to 400,000 engine equivalents. And both for the shareholders and for the company, progress gives way to frustration. There's many ways that the current economy can affect SinterCast, and the first way is, of course, in terms of reduced volume. It also affects installation planning, so many capital investment projects have been frozen. And they're frozen both because if the volumes are decreased, there's no need for new capacity, and therefore no need for new installations. They can also be frozen, again, because credit isn't available. And just like for the purchase of passenger cars, most new equipment in the manufacturing sector is also financed with credit. And finally, there's an entire question about when the new installations were meant to begin production. And if the foundries aren't confident in when future programs will start and in the volume of those future programs, they're not as likely to install capacity to meet them. So we find many foundries today waiting to see what the production volumes will be. And the delay in these programs has affected SinterCast, of course, not just in the current production, but also in the future outlook. When we were together 2 years ago, our guest speakers from Tupi and MAG committed to 4 new production programs for the North American V-diesel sector. And they also said that they were working on other new programs that they hoped to receive orders for. And indeed, since that time, there were new programs that were approved and allocated to the foundries. And as many of you will have read in the media, some of those US V-diesel programs have now been delayed. And I want to highlight that some of them have, certainly not all of them. And we still expect the start of production of new V-diesel engines for the North American market during 2009. And the start of new programs is, of course, the opportunity. And we have opportunity both in the near term and in the long term. In the near term, it's new programs coming on stream, either for the core cylinder block and head sector or for other components, and also in terms of new installations. And you will have seen in our first quarter report, we said that this has been the busiest period in SinterCast history for new field trials. And we believe that some of those field trials will, of course, lead toward new installation opportunities. And some of those are also expected during this year, despite the economy. We also have opportunity in the long term. And in the long term, it can simply be a recovery in the market, which we will benefit from. It can also be growth in our 5 waves and a reactivation of those US V-diesel programs that we still believe are the best solution for the North American market. And so there are a lot of opportunities, not just in the cylinder block and head sector, but in non-automotive industrial power and within the automotive industry for components such as turbocharger housings and clutch components. There's been a lot of development in the market, and we are confident in the programs that are sitting in the development queue. But there's also been a lot of development internally. And over the years, we've been continuously improving our equipment. Our first industrial process control system was launched in 1995, what we called our System 1000. And we learned so much during the development of that program that when it was frozen and launched, we immediately started with the development of the next generation system, which we then called System 2000 and launched in 1998. And the idea behind System 2000 is that it should be a very flexible hardware and software platform to allow us to incorporate new development as it became available in the market. And there have been a lot of hardware upgrades, primarily to improve performance and robustness in the field. There have been a lot of software developments. We're currently operating with what we call version 5.4D. So that is the 5th major release, 4 upgrades, and ABCD, the 4th patch release in the current version. And counting back through all of our software releases, version 5.4D is currently our 57th software release. And if you take that back to the launch date of System 2000, which was 1998, on average it means 1 software upgrade every 3 months. So you see a real intensity of development in the System 2000. Beyond the hardware and software, in the last year and a half, we've had a very aggressive development campaign for the sampling consumable, for the sampling cup. And what we've found as we go to new foundries in new countries is that the raw materials, the scrap steel used, become dirtier with time. And we don't mean dirty in terms of rusty or dirt or oily. We mean dirty in terms of the chemical composition. And the chemicals in those raw materials influence the solidification. And that's the core of our technology. We measure solidification so that we can control the products and make the engines. And what we've done with the sampling cup, you see a coating on it. We have primarily revised the coating to allow it to neutralize the effect of these undesirable chemical elements. And that's a real advantage in the marketplace for SinterCast, that we have become more able to measure more types and more low-grade types of raw materials. Our intention is to roll together these hardware and software upgrades together with the sampling cup and to launch it as a suite of technologies which we will call the System 3000. And our intention is to launch that in the market during August or September of this year. 17 years ago, when my predecessor, Bertil Hagman, was CEO, and I was his technical director, Bertil established a mission statement for SinterCast to say that SinterCast's mission was to contribute to making the world a better place. And I remember at that time thinking that it was a very high ideal and very difficult for our small company to make such a contribution. Now, as I see more of what we're doing in production and as we put more parts into service, I see that indeed we are making a contribution. Our primary contribution comes directly in the foundry industry, where the accuracy and consistency of our technology helps the foundries to make things right first time. And as you saw in the annual report, if we can improve the process efficiency in the foundry by just 1%, whether it is through a reduction in scrap or an improvement in mold yield, that has the equivalent energy contribution of saving 30,000 liters of petrol. So it's a very significant contribution, 30,000 liters of petrol for each 1 million engine equivalents produced. So a very real contribution. Also our engines in the field, all of our engines provide at least 50 grams per kilometer lower CO2 emissions than the nearest available petrol option. And sometimes we get painted with the gas guzzler brush because all of our engines are in the 2.7 to 4.2 liter displacement range. But that's really too shallow and an unfair view. Our engines are more efficient, and if the United States, for example, were to adopt our diesel engines at the same rate that Europe has, the United States would save about 100,000 barrels of oil per day, more than they currently import from Saudi Arabia. So again, an opportunity for a real contribution. And it's not just in diesel engines. We're active in the production of turbocharger housings in China. All of our turbocharger housings are used on passenger cars in the 1.5 to 2.0 liter size class, below 150 horsepower. And those turbochargers improve fuel economy by 10 to 15%. We're also participating in supporting development of new clutch components, which promise to improve fuel economy by 5 to 10%. And again, all of those targeted at vehicles with less than 150 horsepower. Our commercial vehicle engines, and International Navistar has done a very good job of presenting these in the market. Their 13-liter engine is 100 kilograms lighter than their competitor's engine of the same performance rating. 100 kilograms lighter means less fuel consumption, more efficiency, lower CO2 emissions, and of course the ability to carry a higher payload, perhaps leading toward fewer trips. And these engines aren't just used for cargo transport, they're also used for buses. So they provide personal mobility without the need for passenger cars. Again, a contribution. And we're also active in the industrial power sector, whether it is for marine or for rail, and still the two most efficient means of cargo transport in the world. So we're not only about diesel engines, we're primarily about diesel engines, but not only. Our production range is from 2 kilograms to 17,000 kilograms, and the engines we support range from just over 100 horsepower to more than 10,000 horsepower. And in every case, the SinterCast CGI component makes the vehicle or the engine assembly lighter and more fuel efficient. So I think that there is already a good contribution and an opportunity for more as we grow in the market. If we end with an outlook, we know that our technology is strong and our foundation is solid. We have a very good acceptance and feedback from our customers, and the awareness and adoption of CGI in the marketplace is growing. Based on public forecasts, we understand that the market is currently at bottom or at near bottom. So although in the next couple of quarterly reports we may still see a couple of downward adjustments in the engine equivalent pool, we think that this is about the right level, and we don't, again, according to public forecasts, we don't see any significant recovery within this year, but perhaps now we stabilize and start to recover again and start to grow together with the market. We have reduced our engine equivalent pool from 5.7 million in June of last year to the current level of 4.1, and as I say, we think that that's about the right level, perhaps a couple of small adjustments, but it probably finishes about here, and then as we go forward in time and the market recovers, that number will also recover. We have said in the past that SinterCast as a company needs something between 800,000 and 1 million engine equivalents to break even. And as we presented earlier, we're currently running at approximately 400,000. So obviously from a series production point of view, we're still in a cash burn situation. We will have some recovery in the market, but again, we don't expect a dramatic recovery in the automotive market during 2009. The new programs coming on stream will give incremental contribution and help to increase the production volume. But in the near term, if we want to make a contribution in the revenue, we're going to have to do it through installations. And this will become a refocused effort toward our customers to challenge them to commit to installations. We said last year that we had quotations out that amounted to approximately 20 million Swedish crowns. And we can now divide those into 3 different categories. Those that are still active but obviously delayed, those that are on hold, and those that have simply been cancelled. But there still are installation opportunities, and we have to challenge our customers now to commit to those installations in the next weeks, so that we can be confident in the revenue being received during 2009. If we can't get that commitment from the customers, then we will have to start to look toward Plan B in terms of reinforcing the liquidity, which is part of the discussion that we'll have later on in this meeting. Despite the economic situation and the uncertainty, the employees are very motivated. We've had a very positive feedback from the customers, as you've seen, a 96.3% customer quality feedback rating for 2008, which is the highest that we've ever received. And they're very busy with field activities, and by field activities I mean trials. So the employees are motivated and committed to realizing this goal of millions of SinterCast CGI components in vehicles and on the roads. And we look and we reach out to you as our shareholders to continue to support and trust us, and regrettably again this year we ask for your patience. Thank you.